And now we're going to go to the next part of the image generation, which is the sampling method. Now, what is a sampling method? A sampling method is basically a way or a process of generating this image from the latent space of stable diffusion. So I don't want to make it difficult. It's just that the image that you're seeing here is created using this method, and there are many different sampling methods. And most of the sampling methods will more or less give the same result, but there are one or two methods which are probably faster than the other, and there are perhaps one or two methods that create a much more creative image. The images are going to be somewhat different from what you originally prompted. It will be somewhat wilder. So we are going to have a detailed video on sampling method where we will go through various kinds of sampling methods and find out which one behaves in what way. Then the next important part is the sampling steps. How many steps you want stable diffusion to take in order to create your image. Now, the standard sampling step amount is between 20 to 30 steps. If you go below 30 steps, you will not necessarily have a better image. The higher the sampling steps, the more accurate stable diffusion will be to your prompt. But generally, we have found that going beyond 30 steps does not add anything extra to your generations. However, going below 20 steps, going to 5 steps, for example, it will make your generation faster, but it will not necessarily give you a better image or a complete image. Your image will probably be incomplete. Then there is this part where there are three check boxes: restore face, styling, and high res fix. So we're going to look at these options in a later video. But in short, if you click on restore face checkbox, it will attempt to make the face or the appearance of your generated image, especially human faces, to be better if it ever becomes disfigured. Tiling is useful for creating tiled image, which we are not creating today, and high-res fix actually creates a higher resolution image using the latent space. So we will go through these options in a different video when we will discuss how this works. Then comes a very important part of image generation, which is setting the width and the height. So it is fairly easy to understand. Your width and your height sliders actually determine the dimension of your image. By default, stable diffusion creates images which are 512 pixel by 512 pixel. But if you want to see more of the generated body, which means that if you want to see more of her upper body, then you will have to go for a larger height. Let's say you'll have to go for something like 1024. So this will actually create an image which is taller in aspect ratio. So it will give you more of her body to view. But if you go for a wider image, which means that instead of 512 by 1024, you want to go to 1024 by 512, then you get a panoramic view where there may be other things on the left and the right side of your subject. For this kind of subject, we'll stick at 512 by 1024, and you can swap these numbers by clicking this button. So let us generate the same prompt using a higher aspect ratio. Let's see what we get. So friends, as you can see, stable diffusion has generated the same image in a taller aspect ratio, and as a result we can see more of our body in the generated image. So that is what the width and the height actually does. Then comes the batch count and batch size. So batch count and batch size actually creates multiple images at the same time. So if you have a batch count of 2 and you have a batch size of 2, then it will create two images in two batches. Okay, so I'll actually reduce the width and the height quite a bit and show you how it works. So let's make the batch count 2 and the batch size also 2 and generate this image. But before that, I want to talk about the seed. So far, as you can see, I have been using a fixed seed number. Now what this seed number does is that for a certain prompt using a certain width and height, if you have a fixed seed, it will always create the same image. So if you want to create different images using the same prompt, you have to change the seed, or you can actually set it to random. So by clicking in this button, you will get -1 in seed. -1 here simply means a random seed. So I'm putting it to random seed, and I'm creating uh, 4 images of 2 image in 2 batches, and let's see what we get. Hopefully you're going to get 4 different images of 4 different cyborg girl, but we're going to use the same prompt. So as you can see, it did give us four different images based on the same prompt, and basically these are these four images. So you can create four different versions of the same image without having to generate four different times. So let us go back to one and one here. Then finally we have the CFG scale. So the CFG scale actually determines how creative do you want the images to be. If the CFG scale is very low, then you have an image that is very close or very near to what you have prompted. And if you make it very high, let's say if you make it 20 or 22, then Stable Diffusion will try to create an image which is not bounded by your prompt. So let's try both. Let's try to create an image with CFG scale of let's say 2, and then we'll try to do the same with the CFG scale of 20, and let's see what we get. So for a CFG scale of 2, we get this image, which is actually not bad. And now with a CFG scale of 25, let's see what we get. So as you can see, it tried to become too creative. It didn't have anything to do with my prompt. And in fact, it went so out of bound that it created a very distorted image because it was overwhelmed by its own creativity, as you can say.